that.
All right, and Susan Williamson is joining us just now.
Good.
So I'll stay here until Sue gets here to keep letting people in.
Great, thank you, Bob. So welcome everybody. Hello, Susan. Hello, Norm and Judy. I can't tell if you're both there or not. And Marge. Thank you, John Sykes from DEIPL for coming to talk with us again tonight. John is the founder and president of the board of DEIPL. Some will remember John, who spoke with us before, along with Lavadia Owens-White, introducing us to the issue of environmental justice. DEIPL was founded in 2011. I was there for the launching ceremony at
Limestone Press.
Thank you very much. It was in my mind earlier today. It was a great day. So DEIPL is a chapter of IPL, Interfaith Power and Light, which is a national nonprofit whose mission is to inspire and mobilize people of faith and conscience to take bold action on climate change. We've been working with our friends at DEIPL for many years. Lisa Locke, when she was executive director, helped us with the audit of the main church building and with Daughtry and Burton and the Clark House. And Roger was involved in all of those and led Fix-It in remediating issues that were found during the audits. Shweta Arya is the current executive director, and if you haven't met her, she's a ball of fire. She's just great, very, very active, and in fact has arranged one of many sessions is coming up on Monday, which is a session on voting with climate in mind. Some of you have seen an email about that. Tracy Keenan, the Mission Presbytery from our Presbytery, Newcastle Presbytery, is one of the speakers, and anybody wants more info on that, please let me know. So now, thank you, John. I'll turn things over to you.
And Sue just walked in.
Hello, Sue.
Oh, she's back there walking in.
Walking in. Well, thank you, Sally. I appreciate it. And Bob and Roger, it's good to see you again. We've come across our cross paths on audit prep for a number of different places over the years as well. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and to speak with you, in fact, for the next hour or so as well. I have not prepared slides on it. I've done that for so many years. I thought it would be much more comfortable if we just spoke with one another on this as well. So I'll be speaking from a text that I've been working on for the last couple of days, but let's keep this interactive. And if you have questions or comments as we speak, let me know. I've got the text in front of me, so I've got you guys in the background on that. And hopefully it'll be an interesting evening and we can talk about some concepts here as well. I want to give you as just a little bit of incidental background that as I was preparing for this over the last week or two on it, actually going to your website kind of gave me a little bit of a change of perspective on it. And I'll explain why. That in my own church, which is a UU church down in Lewis, on that, for some years we've had a green team, like so many other churches and houses of faith have on it as well. And it occurred to me that perhaps we might get a little bit more involvement of folks if we broadened it beyond just green team. Our church right now, and I know that you all aspire to similar things, is that we're very energy efficient. We've gone totally electric on it. Took over an old house that was probably about 25 years old back around 4 years ago. I did an energy audit of the kind that you have had on this old building. And then working with Energize Delaware, we were able to refurbish it and make it all electric got rid of the oil-fired furnace, which was not exactly energy efficient, put lots of carbon in the atmosphere. But then we also added onto it a 3,000 square foot sanctuary as well, which is very energy efficient, very energy tight. And then a year or two later, we put 27 kW of solar on the west roof. So we're pretty much effectively net zero energy on it. And that's great. You know, the folks in the church are proud of that, but they kind of like said, okay, well, we've given it the office, so I guess we've done our part. And I think that that's probably not quite enough on it as well. So as I was looking at Westminster's site on that, I came across some terminology that I've seen in other places talking about earth care. And I'm thinking maybe that's a little bit more appropriate to where we are with the state of climate in the earth today, and as it's expected to worsen over the future. So I happened to run across this afternoon something from your website referring back to Creation Justice Ministries as well. And I want to read a paragraph from that that kind of sets the tone here, if I may. And I'll quote from this. The last 5 years have shown that the climate crisis is no longer a future worry. It is affecting our communities right now. Record-breaking storms, extreme weather, and the slow violence of sea level rise are tearing at the physical and social fabric of our society. So-called natural disasters in the US have increased in frequency and intensity for the last couple of decades. In 2021, there were at least 18 weather disaster events in the US with losses exceeding $1 billion each. That's 11 events more than the average since 1990. And at the same time, and this is important as well, our political leaders and structures have failed to prevent climate change and prepare for the worst effects. And I'll amplify that because for those who were following along politically, we came within one vote of having a climate solutions bill pass the legislation here in Delaware, one vote shy of getting it through the House when it had passed the Senate. So we were close, but not enough people felt that it was worthy enough to get it out of committee. It became clear, it has become clear that climate change is not merely a problem for the church to prepare for in 10 or 20 years. It is time for the church to prepare right now. Around us, God's people and planet are facing the impact of the climate crisis. As the world groans in travail, the church ought to partner with God in cultivating a redeemed, restored, and resilient creation. So reading that today, plus also considering going green versus caregiving, we changed the name of our green team just this past week at my church to an earth care team as well, to try to get people to broaden their sense of what we are really asked to take care of. And that's the steward of all creation, not just being energy efficient and recycling and all of those things as well. So I'll try to also remind my friends at Interfaith Power and Light here in Delaware to remember that it goes beyond just energy audits. You know, it's really taking the longer viewpoint as well. I personally have two granddaughters who happen to be in Europe, which has a history of terrible heat waves, but also for those who might be noticing, their water levels in places like the Danube River are so low that some of the traffic on the water cannot move. Their barges aren't moving. And that's 40% of their goods are moved around on Europe on barges. So that's what they're facing. And it kind of gives us a little bit of motivation as to why we don't want to leave that a long-term condition if we could possibly make a difference as well. So in any event, What I wanted to do this evening is also tie, climate to your twin goals, your committee's twin goals of combating violence and promoting racial justice. I think we can stipulate that there is a causal connection between increased temperatures and increased violent crimes as well. There are studies out there that you may have seen, I certainly have seen more and more of them, about how things like on the average for each degree Celsius increase in average temperatures, it's associated with a 6% increase in average numbers of homicides as well. I think we were probably all very disheartened a number of years ago as one of the national rags that had talked about Wilmington as being, I think it was Murder City, USA, if I get it correctly on that. And those of you Murder capital, yeah. A lot of that had to do with areas southeast of where you all are. We've spent a lot of time in West Center City, and we know that is a challenging place to live and raise children on that, just because of the amount of crime. And to learn and believe that as temperatures increase, that it's going to be more and more difficult. We'll see more increases in crime as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that in that context, and also to again take us back to where do we go beyond just green teams on it. What struck me, and has struck me a number of for a long time actually, is the whole idea of being caregivers. I was honored to be asked to make the first sermon in the season of creation down at the Episcopal Church of St. Andrews and Matthews a bunch of years ago as well. And talking to folks in the sermon there, that I couldn't help but likening the state of the climate as it continues to worsen to that of perhaps the human body. We talk about if we had a temperature that was 6 or 7 degrees above normal all the time, we'd be in pretty bad shape. And that's the case here in this planet, and it is getting worse. But and I won't stay with the doom and gloom for too long, but I just wanted to kind of look at this as if we were caretakers of a person or friends who, in fact, had such a disease where their temperatures were up and it was affecting all of the parts of their body, which is really what we're seeing in this planet right now. In terms of cancer, which many of us have had too much connection with, we'd probably be talking about a stage 3 or a stage 4 condition, which moves us into palliative care. Those of us who have undergone the responsibilities of being caregivers for people that are as sick as that know what it means. And I would suggest that is the same for us and our planet and the creatures in the planet. That we are talking about having a dedication to their care that is really requires love, it requires attention as well. And it, in fact, for when we look at creation in that regard, we're talking transgenerationally. It's not just us. It's the folks that follow us that we have to work with and help them prepare for this as well. So it's that, and I would submit that they are going to, and we should be helping them consider transitioning to perhaps a different way of living as well, not one that is based on consumption as much of ours is today. So I think that would be important for us to be thinking about it. You may be aware that this past summer, the DEIPL put on an essay contest for high schoolers and invited all of the high schoolers in Delaware to submit essays on 4 different categories having to do with the environment and climate. I was one of the judges for that. I think we had 160 or so different students that participated in that. And I will tell you that it was very heartening to read their essays, that they were all very good. And some of them really would amaze one, that their understanding of the situation and their responsibility toward it is to be something to behold. There was a young lady from Newark who I had the pleasure of introducing at the award ceremony from Newark Charter School on that. And what she does, what she has been doing is that not only attending the youth environmental summits and things like that, but she's also one of 30 students that are working on the Newcastle County 2050 comp plan. And their focus is on making sure that the policies are right for the next 30 years on their to help ensure that they have a better climate than they're anticipating right now. So I was just so filled with warmth to read that these are the kinds of things that some of them are doing. And they understand that there is a need for them to be advocates for their own future, which means getting in touch with their politicians and letting them know that this is important. And this is something that is worth going to the polls for, going to vote for as well. So I found that was very heart-rending to know that there are folks that are coming up in this next generation who really get it, and hopefully will help teach their parents that maybe we ought to be helping them along the way.
John, I think some of those are posted on DEIPL's website.
They are. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was pretty good. And I invite you all to check out the website, delawareipl.org. So we've kind of talked about, how, we're going to need to change our attitudes for dealing with this problem of not doing the 3 R's of recycling and reducing, et cetera, but also to take it a lot more personally and to share that deep connection that we have to feel toward this if we're going to be able to live a livable future for those that follow. One of the areas that I know that you are so concerned with, and so are many groups of faith leaders, is around the folks that are living in our frontline communities, those that are facing, they're amongst the first and the worst of feeling the effects of climate change, not only worldwide, but here as well. And they typically have had the least to do with it happening as well. So it's rather unfair as well. And what can we do about those? As a percentage of expenses, their utility bills are higher than the rest of us on it. And they have to deal with, in a lot of cases, the dangers of extended heat waves. So one of the things that I'm proud of our group for what we have done, and I know that some of you are aware of this, we've been working with Temple United down on Washington Street for a lot of years. It goes back all the way to 2013, I think. work with them to see what we could do to be a part of their community and to make a difference as they feel is needed on this. Contrary to what I've heard others say, that low-income folks may not have the nomenclature of climate change, but they know what it means in terms of how it feels to them and what the impact is on them as well. And we certainly found that in working at Temple United Church on Washington Street. We started up a program down there in 2013 called Green Empowerment as well. And the idea of green empowerment is that it's important for folks to understand what they can do to help themselves, as opposed to somebody coming in from the outside saying, this is what you need to do for climate change. I was invited to a meeting that friends that I think that Joe and Ed Klinge had with Wilmington faith leaders, and was talking about green empowerment. And one of the local ministers there, a Black minister of some note, I had cautioned me as I'm going along trying to explain what our program is, which I thought was a good program on it. And he said, as far as green empowerment goes, I got to tell you that you being a white guy coming into a Black church and talking about green doesn't feel right to us on that. He said, so why don't you just leave the green on the table and we'll kind of take it from there. And that's a very learning experience on that as well. That motives were not bad, but coming in and speaking that way apparently felt rather missionary-like to him, and it helped guide us as we were moving along. What we were able to do at Temple United, working with Pastor John Graham on that, is that here's a name from the past for you guys, that we were able to get a couple of grants from West Center City Futures Council and the West Legacy Trust. I imagine some of you remember the West Legacy Trust from Old West Church down on that part of town as well. And through that, we were able to accomplish a couple of things. For Temple United Church, we got them an audit and helped them weatherize their church as well, which included putting white reflective material on the Black roofs up there. And then, so that helped reduce the energy load in the church. Then also learning from some of our friends, block captains, et cetera, in that neighborhood, that food was not easy to come by, especially if you wanted nutritious food. And in fact, they were in a food desert down in that area. So working with again, with the West Center City Futures, with the Delaware, the Horticulture Center, and also with a number of other churches with DEIPL, that they were able to build, who provided tools. They were able to build a community garden behind one of the churches next to, or one of the buildings next to the church as well. So the Helping Hands Community Garden was started as well. So that was quite heartening. But then beyond that, we felt that it was important to help folks deal with the changes of weather that was coming up. We're heading toward winter. And we put on a series of seminars up in in the second floor of the church for them, for their neighbors, people in the congregation, to learn how to winterize their homes. And we're able to get donations of various energy saving things that you would see in an energy audit, and taught them how to do caulking, how to put window coatings on and change light bulbs out, et cetera, as well. And so that was a good start. One of the things that we learned from that was to adjust our approach to it. That after we had done this a couple of times, we felt it was important to do a survey of folks who had received these energy kits and the instruction on how to use them. We wanted to find out how well it went. So we're having a meeting with folks from the neighborhood, and there's a woman sitting next to me who's pretty faithful in attending these, and she said, or asked me, she said, Mr. John, could I perhaps have a second kit? I said, well, no, we really don't have a lot of them, so it's kind of like one per customer. And she said, no, it's not for me, it's for my neighbor. You got a whole lot of folks down this street here who aren't going to come up to the second floor of this. We need to be able to get them out there. So we were able to get some more, and we used her and paid her to take those kits out to folks within the neighborhood to help them reduce their energy use just a little bit, but it might be enough to make a big difference on it as well. So let me any questions so far? Because I'll just keep rolling.
John, I just was wondering whether you partner with Delmarva. I remember years ago when the big natural gas or big electric rates increased, that big increase back when deregulation occurred. I remember Delmarva holding sessions at Kingswood Community Center, doing, it sounds like the same kind of thing, and giving out kits and demonstrating caulking. I don't know if Delmarva is involved in that these days or not.
A couple of ways, Sally, that I had forgotten this, but when we were putting on our workshops at Temple United, we always had somebody from Delmarva there. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes they'd bring a laptop so that if anybody had questions about their bills, they could look them up on that. But Delmarva also at that time, and I imagine still now, had a free service where if somebody felt that their energy bill was too high, they would actually have somebody go out and kind of do an energy survey of their home as well. So that was part of it. So we worked pretty closely with Delmarva over the years in a couple of ways. Well, one of them was that we were invited, and this was Lisa Locke and myself were invited to meet with the president of Delmarva and his staff on a monthly basis to talk about low income on it as well. They wanted to make sure that they could connect. If they had new programs that would come up, they would ask us if we could help them rationalize those as well. And to be perfectly above board on it, we were able to get a little bit of funding from them to keep our operations going. Mm-hmm. So we felt it was better to be in their camp in order to work with them directly. Gary Stockbridge was the president of the group at the time. In fact, he was quite active in Kingswood, as long as you mentioned that as well. He's now retired, riding his Harley Davidson somewhere. But so we did that as well. There is another aspect that I'll get to them in a few minutes on that. I grew up in northwestern Pennsylvania, where it's cold in the wintertime and they get a lot of snow. My dad, every October or so, used to go into the basement and get out storm windows and put them up on the house to keep the house warm. And Roger, you're shaking your head. You remember those days as well, I'm sure, and others may. Yeah. And then he did that every year, right? Springtime, take him down on that. But we had single pane windows back in those days.
That was a pain in the neck job too, I will say.
Yeah, right. Indeed. So I remember those days, and I came across back around 2016. I came across on the internet. I came across a nonprofit group out of Maine who was making storm windows that would go on the inside. And it was kind of interesting. I'm looking at my window here. You probably can't see it, but you can imagine this, right? So you take a regular rectangular window on that and you measure it on the inside and get the measure it twice or maybe even 3 times, get the dimensions exact. And then you build a wooden frame that fits in that. And on this frame, on both sides, you put shrink wrap plastic. And you take foam tape and put it around the outside edges of this, and then you press in. Mm-hmm. So now you've got a single pane window that has become a 3-pane window, with 2 levels of air cushion in between, which are what you need to be able to insulate it more. That does 2 things. One is it adds effectively an R2.3 worth of insulation on these windows versus a 1, which you get out of, just to have them by themselves. But also when you're doing that, you usually are going to do some caulking around the edge so you get rid of some of the drafts on that. And I saw that online and I thought, I wonder if that's something we could do. Because as you all know, a lot of these old homes in Wilmington, especially down in that section of town, Quaker Hill and West Center City and in other areas on that, those are old homes, and they are not well insulated. Many of them have single pane windows, and you can't put in a double pane window because the architectural requirements prohibit you from doing anything that makes it look like it's modern, right? So we thought, well, maybe there might be something we could do there. And we went back to Apostle John at Temple United and said, I got a deal for you. Can we try this out in your church? So one of our folks, Mark, was good at building things on that, and we commissioned him to try it out. And we built a shop or put together a construction shop in the basement of this old church on that, where you had to kind of duck to get underneath the pipes and watch out for the cockroaches and all those fun things on that, and then moved it upstairs. But we ended up building these window inserts for most of the church. Pastor John will testify to this day that the combination of that, along with the weatherization stuff that we had done before, enabled him to cut his utility bills in half. So that's pretty good testimony. I'll take his word for it. I didn't really need to go back and look at energy bills on that. That's enough for me to say that we ought to be going forward with it. Now, here's another name from the Presbyterian past. That we went to Spear Trust, and we were able to get a small grant from Spear Trust to expand that program. And we worked with 3 different faith groups in Wilmington, all 9th Ward on that. So Majdak Al-Kathar, that's not 9th Ward, that's a little more northeast, but we worked with Majdak Al-Kathar, Trinity Episcopal, and Brandywine UMC, and we put shops in each of those facilities. And for Brandywine and for the Majdak up there, working with them and their folks, we were able to put these interior storm windows throughout the whole buildings on that as well. Now, our intent was to set it up so that they might offer the same kind of things to their neighbors. Unfortunately, they went as far as fitting up their own houses of faith and didn't take it a lot further on that. But it showed that it could be done on that as well. Now, fast forward a couple of years and back in 2020, now we'll bring Delmarva back into it. I would imagine that that many of you, and I know Roger is one of them, will remember when Exelon came to town, and they wanted to merge with Pepco or Delmarva, along with the other 4 regions in this area, Pepco or Philly, DC, Maryland as well. So there was a lot of stuff going on for a couple of years to see if that could happen. Well, one of the things that occurred during that time was Exelon decided to put a little bit of honey into the deal, and they offered to put $4 million on the table for low-income energy savings for Delmarva customers, low-income energy burdened customers on that. I happened to be on the Energy Advisory Committee, Energy Efficiency Advisory Committee at that time, and we were able to guide the distribution of that money, frankly, out of the hands of DENREC and into the hands of the community as well, and got them to agree that they would work with different folks within the community to be able to build on that $4 million and expand it and make sure that the money was made available to people within the community, specifically businesses within the community who wanted to do energy efficiency stuff to help their neighbors on that. That became the Empowerment Grant Program that exists today. So I had left the advisory council and our Windows program was one that we thought really ought to go beyond what we've done here so far. So we applied for a grant, actually a pair of grants that amounted to $100,000 to build these Windows inserts, which we now called Windows of Hope, to build them for low-income people in West Center City on that. Yeah, Roger.
John, in all you're talking, are you talking about homeowners, renters, or using them regardless of whether they're a homeowner or a renter? Because it seems to me that if you're dealing with landlords, you get one answer, but if you're dealing with the people that pay the bills, you get another. So I don't know how you were working with both.
Right. Well, it actually started off with landlords, one landlord in particular. And the reason that we went that direction was that 50 to 75% of the renter of low-income folks are renters. And we didn't want them not being able to save energy, as well. And I understand that there is a difference, and some of them pay the bills and some directly and some don't on that. But we wanted to make sure that the folks who were probably in the worst straits, which appeared to be the renters across Wilmington, would be the first target audience. We started off with about $80,000 grant and got another $20,000, and the other $20,000 went to homeowners as well. So, but the criteria was for folks in low income on it. The landlord that we worked with was Morningstar Enterprises, Bob Jones, who also is a pastor of a Bible school or Bible church up in Wilmington. And he'd been doing some good stuff in the neighborhood. So we thought it was worthwhile working through him on it. So after a year and a half or so, we ended up outfitting approximately 80 different households with these, anywhere from 5 to 8, 9 of these windows in each household. One of the things that we had really wanted to do from the beginning, though, was to, again, keep it local. And I happened to go over to the Quaker meeting hall on Quaker Hill, and there was a support group for returning citizens on that. And I brought one of our sample Windows inserts over there, and I asked, does anybody here want to make these for money? And within 5 minutes, there was a guy that walked over to me, took the window and said, I'm there as well. We ended up hiring 3 or 4 folks previously incarcerated and paid them double the minimum wage to build these, which is not a difficult task. You put together 4 or 5 pieces of wood and shrink wrap on both sides. The toughest part is getting the measurements right. So we were able to do that, which was a triple win. One is that the folks who were making them got paid to do it, and these are folks that don't easily find work as well. So it helped them kind of get back into it a little bit. It was good for the people in the neighborhood because it helped reduce their energy costs. Hopefully, even those whose landlords are paying them. But then also, it cut down on the amount of energy that was being used on these homes. So it was good for the environment. So that seemed like it was a pretty good opportunity. Back in earlier this year, I was approached by our funders who said, "We want you to expand this beyond." We wanted them. My own investigation, looking at the 2010 census and estimating average number of households or windows in households that could use this, I found out that there were somewhere between 50 and 60,000 households in poverty level here in Delaware, which is a shocking number, but it's true. On that, most of them up in Newcastle County, as you might imagine, not far from where you guys are. I could even break it down with census data to how many in each neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera. But it seemed like with that amount of folks out there that could use this, there's a market for it. And the funders felt that was the case. Well, I got to be honest, Delaware Interfaith Power and Light, it was not my idea for us to become a fenestration company. I didn't want us to be a company or an outfit that spent most of its revenue on building windows as well. And I used to work for a high-tech firm and was part of their outsourcing group. So I thought, well, maybe we could outsource this work. So I had discussions with Interfaith Community Housing right down the street on Washington Street, who had a reputation or who had done a lot of home refurb, as well as a group called the HELP Initiative, HELP, which had programs for lighting up low-income areas to help reduce crime, and they were interested in things like this. So those two outfits right now are looking at applying for larger grants from the empowerment program that they'll be taking grant applications next month. And they're looking to expand the program gradually, but across the whole state. So, it's a simple idea, but it saves energy, it saves money. And for folks who spend a large portion of their money or their expenses on utilities, it seems like it's a good thing to do if we can. So that's kind of where that program is as well. So I wanted to mention that. Now, a second challenge, and I'm mindful of the time here, but a second challenge here that we kind of talked about a little bit earlier is that climate change is bringing increased temperatures. And with those increased temperatures comes heat waves that are increased in the number of and the frequency of them, their intensity, and their duration of them. And you've all seen it in the news. The Pacific Northwest and the west of this country has been hit pretty hard this year, but nothing like India and Pakistan and South America a bit, but it's around the world on that. And heat waves kill more people than every other weather-related event. So, there's a lot of people that die from this. And it's the kicker on that, if I could use that term, is that it doesn't have to be that way, especially in Western countries. I'll remind you back of 1995, there was a several-day heat wave that hit Chicago. And there were somewhere around 739 people that they attributed their deaths to that one heat wave in Chicago. And those were not folks like us. Those are folks who lived in somewhat isolated lives, socially disconnected, low income, high risk. They had diseases that were exacerbated by this as well. They didn't have the resources to either have or to run AC on it as well. And they didn't have the communication with the outside world to know that this was about to happen to them. So it wasn't until several days afterwards, and I won't go into the detail because it's messy, but several days afterwards when the city of Chicago figured out that there were a lot of people that were dead in these apartments because of this. And the main attribute to this is that they didn't have a social network to help them through that. Well, here in Delaware, there are, I got to tell you that the DHSS and DEMA, who are the ones who should be responsible for our overall health on this, especially with emergencies like this, aren't up to speed as to where they ought to be. And I've been tracking this for a long time on that. So we'll get a heat wave called out by the National Weather Service, and you don't read about it. You don't see it in the paper. You don't see a warning saying, this is coming. Here's where the local cooling centers are. That doesn't happen. I even called up I called up WDEL news station some years ago, and there was a heat warning across the whole state. And the protocol for DEMA is that the media is supposed to be warned about this and put the word out. I called up WDEL and I asked them about that. And they said, people know it's hot out. All you have to do is go outside. That was their response on it as well. You look on the websites of DEMA or in each of the counties, et cetera, and there wasn't much there. So there's two aspects of this that I want to highlight here as we start closing down. And that's that there are two aspects to this that can change that dynamic. One is that if there were better warning systems that would let the agencies know that heat waves, extended heat waves of this duration with expected mortalities and morbidity were coming, that would be my phone or my watch is telling me something. I'm not sure what it is, but anyway, that it's really important to know when these are coming so you can prepare for them. The second thing is that it takes more than just getting the word out. It takes having a place for people to go, and it takes having a network of concerned people to be alert, to know when they're happening, and to check in on their neighbors. Well, two things about that can be corrected. One is that back about 10 years or so ago, when we first started looking at that, we came across a warning system called the Heat Health Warning System that had been developed by a professor out of UDEL that actually provided a mechanism looking at like 23 different attributes beyond just heat index, but many other ones that took into consideration the local dynamics, the local conditions of folks. And they put together this system that gave up to 5 days warning. That's used in Philadelphia, and now it's used around the world, but it wasn't used in Delaware. So we thought, well, what can we do to change that? And our group, DEIPL, partnered with DENREC, Colin O'Mara, for those who remember him from years gone by, and we split the cost of tailoring that system for Delaware. It was put into two areas. One was Newcastle County, and the other one was Kent and Sussex. So that was tailored, built, and ready for the National Weather Service to use as they were doing the forecast. The snare was that neither DHSS or DEMA felt that heat was a problem, so they didn't want to see it implemented. Okay. DENREC did, but DENREC didn't have influence over there. So that was that part of it, but Philly was using it. Now, the other part, though, is that looking around Center City, Wilmington, and beyond, places like Center City, Wilmington have what's called the heat island effect. And that's where they have lots of blacktop, lots of black roofs, and not as much tree cover as they need. So it's about anywhere from 1 to 8 degrees hotter during these heat waves in those urban heat zones than it is outside of them. So that's an important aspect of this. But in places in urban, these urban heat islands, by gosh, there's a church on just about every corner, right? They're all over the place, and community centers, et cetera, et cetera. So wouldn't it be cool if we could work through our houses of faith and have them take on the responsibility of identifying the neighbors who might be at risk, including their own congregants on that, identifying them up front to ensure that their house of faith had the resources, i.e. lots of water and cool air, to where they might be able to take somebody in for a couple hours to help them cool down. Philadelphia does that, and they call it the buddy system. And Hunting Park, in one particular neighborhood, they've really got that going well. So we thought, wouldn't that be something that we could do here as well? And we did that a couple of years ago in West Center City with Temple United Church and the Hicks Anderson Community Center as well. We want to do that again as well. And we're working with Salem United Methodist Church in Newark, who approached us and said, we got a lot of older folks here that we'd like to take care of during these times. So with a grant from Exelon, by the way, a small grant of $3,000, we're able to help finance part of that cooling center that they will establish just as a pilot toward the end of this year. Also, the good news is that the city of Wilmington has a sustainability plan, and that includes cooling centers in identifying the heat zones and putting cooling centers in. They're working with UDEL, with DENREC, and actually DHSS to, in the springtime, they're going to send folks out in vehicles equipped with sensors to measure heat and humidity on really hot days. And they're going to try to map out where the heat islands are in Wilmington, so they know where the best place is to be putting in cooling stations as well. We're a part of that discussion, and they've asked us to work with our member churches or whoever we can to find folks who will volunteer to drive those vehicles or to have those instruments on their vehicles, but they'll get paid to do this. And on hot days, they'll drive around in specific routes, capture that information, and they'll feed back into the larger system to be able to map out where the heat islands are on it. Now, the other part of that, though, is just what we've been talking about, and what I would invite you to think about for the future is that we need to be able to set up a network of neighbors helping neighbors. Folks who will identify where the at-risk people are on it, and be willing to check up on them. Visit them before the heat hits, make sure that they understand what's going on, and that they're okay with y'all stopping by, and when it does hit, and finding out if they're okay, or calling them, just check on them as well. And if they're not doing well, let's get them some help. Take them to a cooling station, or call 911 or whatever it is. The response that we have gotten in the past of, folks can get themselves to like the mall, doesn't work. Go to the library, it doesn't work, because in Wilmington, to get to the library from Orange and 2nd Street or something like that is a long walk. And not a lot of people are used to taking buses to go from one place to another as well. So we got to have something that's locally accessible on that. So that's something that we're looking to get a lot more involved in next year as well. But to me, that and helping the neighbors lower their energy use to better afford their energy bills for our group as well as advocacy stuff that you all know we're doing. That's our way of trying to impact the environmental justice issues that we know we have and we're going to see more of.
Roger.
I had a question about, are there guidelines for interior home temperatures that, I would suppose it's length of time, temperature, and humidity. If you have all those three going for an elderly person or someone who's disabled or someone who's sick, that it seems to me that that would be, there should be some guideline. Like if your home is over 87 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 4 hours and humidity is greater than 70%, you're in risk.
Right.
Are there guidelines like that that we can hear about or exist? Do you know anything about that?
I think that's a good question. That we're working with a group that's led by Dr. Alan Greenglass. Some of you may know him, and they started up this group over the last year called the Mid-Atlantic Alliance for Climate and Health.
He will speak to us on November 10th. He's scheduled for this group.
Great. He's wonderful on that, and we work pretty closely with them as well. They would be able to help find that out. It triggers something else, Roger, that I thought about recently on that. I know Roger has a lot of experience in doing energy audits. And one of the things that good auditors will do is they'll put in these little temperature buds scattered throughout the church, which measures across time, temperature, humidity as well. And you can put one in the sanctuary, you can put one in various places because they want to find out how the heat's distributed throughout the church. And they run that for a couple of weeks and then they analyze all of that. I'm wondering if we might do the same thing for some of these older homes.
I was thinking exactly the thing. I mean, if you have a smoke detector running on a little 9-volt battery, put in one of these things, yep, and it's going to sound an alarm. And then it's like, why is my alarm going off? Oh, it's the excessive heat alarm. And you say, you take some action. I can't shut it off, Of course, they always beep when the battery's low, and that's another thing. But I'm thinking exactly along the lines that you were thinking, that these would be an indicator. And wouldn't that be a wonderful thing to be able to, if we were able to find such a device and provide that in our community? And
well, they exist. The auditors use those, and the new ones out, and we're going to pay for it. Or actually, Energized Delaware is for one of our auditors, but these things have Bluetooth, so that you don't have to be too far away. You can drive past a home that's got these installed, and you can do a quick measurement of where is it, how is it doing in there, and just to kind of as a random sample pick some of these older homes in these heat island areas, just to find out, how bad is it going to get in there? So, I mean, those are things like that. But there's also a lot of information out that we've collected and that is out on the web that say, these are the things that you should do, and this is what you shouldn't do. One thing that previous mayors in Wilmington have done is that they've given out fans. Okay, well, that's interesting on that, but I can tell you down on like West Street and maybe Fifth Ave or something like that there's not a lot of people that have their windows open in the summertime. It's kind of dangerous to have your windows open on that. And if you put a fan in an apartment and there's no windows and there's no AC, you've just created a convection oven, which is the worst thing you can do on that, right? So there are things that are important to know, and what I think we want to do, working with Bob Hall from Salem United Methodist, is that we want to create a little folder, a little handout that they can put in their order of service, and say, heat wave, do this, don't do this. So things like that to be able to help them out, and those are the kinds of stuff that don't cost much, that can save a life. the stats are interesting on it. And our friend Larry Kalkstein, Dr. Kalkstein, who built this warning system, has been tracking this stuff for years. And it turns out that there's a direct correlation for the number of hospital ER admittances to a heat wave. Whenever there's a heat wave that spikes, so do the hospital admittances go. And many of those are for low-income folks who don't have insurance. So who pays for that? The hospital has to pay for the cost of those folks who coming in. That ain't cheap. You know, it's anywhere from $500 to a couple of $1,000 for every time somebody walks into that ER, depending upon what services they get. Wouldn't it be neat to do something proactively to maybe not have so many people come in? Just saying.
You have given us so much to think about, and it's so inspiring, the work that DEIPL is doing. And so, I mean, it's heartening that this terrible future hangs over, and yet there are steps that we can do person to person to make it better. Thank you.
Every house of faith, or every faith tradition talks about, you know, the ministries that we could have, should have, to take care of the folks who can't take care of themselves. Regardless of what happens with the climate in the future, we're going to have more of those folks. So our calling, to me, is clear. You know, we got to take care of the folks who can't take care of them, and unfortunately, climate is going to give a lot more of those folks. Put a lot more of those folks out there for us to be stewards of all of the. And this doesn't talk about any of the other parts of creation, like is behind me visually here on the screen. That's another
huge faith issue. Yes, I agree.
Indeed.
Any other questions before we thank John and welcome Sue? Hello.
I've been here. I just was having dinner. Been a long day.
What?
What? Thank you, John.
Yeah, John's great. Thank you so much for being here again. We really appreciate it. Really appreciate what DEIPL is doing. And as I say, it's a lot to think about and inspiring. So thank you.
Thanks for the invitation. Always good to be with you all.
Thank you,
John.
Hope to see you
Good night,
next
everybody.
week. Okay. It's a let's talk about it. So we'll hopefully see you then.
Okay.